Good morning. I want to welcome everyone to our first webinar in our Big Pivot series. My name is Jen Sudduth, and I'm the new chapter president for ACG in Houston. I'm going to hand over the panel discussion to JB Donaldson in just a minute with Crutchfield Capital, but before we begin, I want to thank our annual sponsors. So we have our platinum sponsors, Gulfstar Group, Gray Reed, Moss Adams, Solomon Edwards, and our gold sponsors, Amerisource, Haynes & Boone, Insperity, KeyBank Capital Markets, Vaco, and Weaver, and our silver sponsors. ABIT, Baker Tilly, BDO, Boyer Miller, BVA Group, Cadence, EEPB, Fifth Third Bank, Imperial Cost Control, PNC, and Porter Hedges. We certainly appreciate your support of our organization and this webinar series. So I'd like to remind everyone that this is the first of a two-series webinar. We're going to have another one called Resilience, and it's going to be how PE firms have made strategic changes during the quarantine. It'll be on Thursday, July 23rd at 10 a.m., so mark your calendars and look for that invite coming soon. A few housekeeping items before we get started. If you have a question for the panelists, you can do it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll be sending those to JB to ask towards the end of the program. Not all of them, but we'll send them as many as we can. We're also going to be recording today's webinar so you can access it later. We'll send you an email link through the ACG website email program. All right. So now I'm going to introduce our moderator, JB Donaldson. He is the managing director at Crutchfield Capital. He has more than 2 decades of investment banking and corporate finance experience, and he has successfully managed numerous middle market M&A transactions, private equity placements, troubled company restructurings, and complex business evaluations. All right, JB, I'll let you take it from here.
Great, thank you very much. Very much appreciate that, Jen. And before I get started with the rest of our panelists, I wanted to really thank several folks that have made this all happen at ACG Houston. We've got a great chapter administrator, Morgan Stone, and she's been guiding us through this process. Obviously, Jen Sudduth of Sudduth Search that you just saw, Nancy Bostic of Gray Reed, Michelle Lewis of Cap Street, and Melinda Jackson of Cadence Bank all formed the committee to create this webinar series. So you talk about a big pivot at ACG. We've had to do that and get into the virtual world. So I just wanted to thank them before we bring all of our panelists on. So I'm going to ask all the panelists to unmute and bring their video up, and I'd like to just go around and introduce them. I'm not going to go into their background. I'm going to let you guys read that. You should have gotten an email. But joining me is Matt Dunn, the CEO of APG, Cody Johnson, the CEO of National Signs, and Leland Putterman, co-founder of Tribe. So these guys are really at the forefront of what's going on in Houston and Houston business. And our objective here is to shed some light on how companies locally have reacted to the COVID environment. And what I'm going to do is start with Matt, and we'll go around the horn here. Matt, you'll have to unmute your video there. But I'm going to ask Matt and every one of our panelists to give us a description of their business pre-COVID and post-COVID. And in that description, I would like you to maybe talk a little bit about that aha moment that you had when this COVID pandemic hit and you realized that there was something going to be different about life going forward. So Matt, we'll start with you and just describe your business if you could, and then and what your business looked like before and after the COVID environment. I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
Sure. Thanks, JB. Good morning, everyone. APG is a 77-year-old manufacturer and distributor of fluid sealing and conveyance products based here in Houston. We're currently sponsored by the Cap Street Group, who've been great partners throughout my time with APG. So talking about what the business looked like before, business is a very traditional manufacturing distributor structure servicing basically every market vertical outside of medical, textile, and pharmaceuticals. Our products are small, critical components that make manufacturers, enables manufacturers to do their job and deliver their products to their markets. So the business is very structured, very traditional in a sense. I would say, pre-COVID really hasn't embraced the entire technology space entirely. I think that's fairly common with most manufacturing businesses. And then COVID happened. COVID happened to all of us. And that aha moment for me was when you started seeing local municipalities, state governments issuing shelter in place or stay home, work safe orders that really impeded the free movement of people, products, and commerce. And for us, we manufacture a line of safety plastics for industrial applications. So face shields for grinding, metal working, sandblasting. And it made a lot of sense. So there were calls from large companies around the globe to help the effort to fight COVID. And for us, it was adjacent space. It made sense. How can we take an industrial product like a grinding face shield, rework it to be relevant for a medical application or PPE application? And that's what we did. So post-COVID, what did it look like? Well, like you mentioned, ACG, we embraced technology. We were able to spin up remote working. We were able to maintain engagement with our workforce virtually, and that's changed APG. I think all the things that we ever wanted to do just got compressed into a 2-week window because of COVID. So we're still investing in the business. We're still investing in talent, in facilities and infrastructure and capital equipment. And very excited to be here. Thanks, JB.
Well, thanks, Matt. And I'm going to turn to Cody next and ask him the same questions. You've got a national sign manufacturer, and now all of a sudden COVID hits. So describe your business pre and post COVID.
Sure. So pre-COVID business is roughly 30 years old. We're sponsored by Tolkien Management here in Houston. Been great to work with as well during my tenure here. The company's focus was focused on manufacturing landmark signage, whether that be monument or pylon signage. We did projects for folks like NRG Stadium, all the signage and outside digital display boards, Minute Maid Park, Toyota Center, Gallery Furniture, the huge sign, 92-foot sign at Smart Financial Center with the huge digital display board the size of a soccer field. We did rebrandings for folks like Veritex Bank and Capital One. And again, really focused on landmark signage, architectural accents, and digital outdoor digital displays. We're the largest distributor for Daktronics digital displays in the state of Texas. Our aha moment came. I was on the way back from a bid meeting at the state capitol in Austin for their expansion, a DPS office expansion, and my brother, who was running an emergency room at Mount Sinai in New York City, he's an anesthesiologist, called me, and they had put him in charge of a COVID-19 response board. So I wasn't really sure what that was. But the conversation concerned me so much that I pulled over on the side of the highway and talked to him about it. And he was encouraging me to have a readiness and response plan for COVID in the business, and encouraging me as someone who has 25 years experience in custom manufacturing. Everything we do is custom, to figure out how to manufacture some of the things that the country needed. So when I hung up the phone with him, I immediately called a friend of mine, a long-time friend that is the chair of pediatrics and neonatology at University of Texas Medical Branch. She echoed everything that my brother said and mentioned that they needed face shields, that was one of the things that they really needed. Talked with her and my brother, as well as some other medical professionals, just sort of about what the best design was. And it took us about, I got back to the office, got back to the shop here, prototype. 3.5 hours later, we had it in the hands of medical professionals, and they gave us some feedback. 3 days later, we made our first deliveries. We ramped up from being able to make about 1,000 that first week to 400,000. We have capacity for 400,000 a month now. And we have excess capacity. But so the business before and after, I'd say we've got some new product lines. We're manufacturing and installing acrylic barriers, sort of the higher end permanent acrylic barriers for our customers. We're manufacturing and supplying the face shields. We've got digital display boards that are on trailers that can be mobilized more quickly to visually communicate with your customers. For example, one of the differentiators for restaurants is if they can visually communicate dynamically with their customers, the status of their business and the status of their ability to deliver their product. So we have really nice digital displays on trailers. But I think what's the same is we're a custom manufacturer. We remain very focused on our core business of signage and outdoor digital displays, architectural accents. And most importantly, we remain focused on solving our customer problems. I think what makes capitalism work is that, good businesses solve problems. And so I think as long as we as business leaders keep a robust contact with the needs of our customers and the priorities of those needs, priorities of those problems, and we continue to address those, capitalism will continue to work, and those businesses that do that will continue to succeed.
Well, I'm going to come back to you in just a second, talk a little bit about process changes and some of the effects it had on your employees, but I'd like to move to Leland for a second. And Tri-V, obviously a different type of business than we're talking about here. We have two manufacturers. So if you could tell us a little bit about what you guys do, Leland, and what you guys are doing now post-COVID, the differences between the business, and just a description, if you would, of whether opportunities have been lost or opportunities have been created for your firm. So I'll turn it over to you, Leland.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so March kind of arrived for all of us, and Tri-V is a much smaller organization than either Cody or Matt's organization, and we're earlier stage. We are an app, and clients prior to COVID used the app to help reinforce training, to make sure that people actually remembered their training. And we use brain science, and we use a little bit of our artificial intelligence to personalize. And so for a little bit of extra time reviewing things, we were able to see a dramatic improvement in people actually remembering their training. That was great, and we were growing significantly, and we were in the process of raising our Series A financing for growth capital. And then, of course, COVID hit. And we saw a couple of things. One of our partners is Accenture, and Accenture was getting us into some big accounts, and several of the big accounts were using us to help bring their employees together to use us for remote training, remote learning. And we thought, well, that's kind of interesting. That's a different change. So we kind of leaned into that a little bit. And then a big aha happened, really once again driven by one of our clients. And the big aha was that our app could be used not just for training and making sure that people remember training, but really for all critical corporate communications. If you think about a company that has hundreds or thousands of employees, bringing them all together, making sure that everybody's rowing in the same direction is a huge challenge. And so our app, without really changing the app, really by moving our messaging and changing it a little bit, as well as changing our sales process and communicating that with our partners out there, we now have morphed our messaging to the marketplace where it's not just about training that you want to make sure employees remember, but it's also critical corporate communications, because the numbers on that are pretty pathetic. Corporation sends out communication to their employees and they really don't typically even read it. So a lot of exciting things that are on the horizon for us over the next year or two.
So it sounds to me like all of you, basically as a result of this COVID pandemic, found new product lines to and new areas to take advantage of. And I'll go back to each one of you, starting with Matt, and talk, if you would, about that process change within your organization. How quickly did it happen? How quickly did you have to pivot? And what are some of the lessons learned as you were going through this process to pivot, if you would, to other product lines, to new markets, starting with you, Matt?
Sure. So I think any change process starts with people. And I think my fellow panelists would agree with that. That's the biggest challenge. People interpret and accept change in varying ways. And communication has to be adapted to meet people's independent style of learning, et cetera. So the people change was probably the hardest part of the pivot for us. From a manufacturing perspective, retooling a line, creating new manufacturing techniques to go after a market that we had no experience in was much easier, because we have that skill set within our business. We all have experience in custom manufacturing in the past, but the biggest change for us probably wasn't the line and tool process change of creating a part for an adjacent space. It was bringing the people along with that. And that change, I'd say, happened for the most part very rapidly. We asked the business, hey, we feel like we can do something to help, and we want to help local organizations with our product. And in the main, most people really gravitated and have a sense of contribution to an effort to fight the fires, an effort to help their fellow Houstonians. And it's a real sense of pride within the organization. I'd also say that, our partners at Capstreet really helped open the door to our largest customer for our medical PPE products. So seeing the interaction between the private equity sponsor and the portfolio company was tremendous. And they have provided resources and opportunities for us throughout this entire process. So the pivot was really interesting. But the pivot started with the people, less so about the product. And I'd say that was the biggest change within the organization.
I'm going to stick with you for just 1 second, Matt, and tell us about the psychology around the people. I think that everybody involved in the past will talk about the people aspect, the biggest challenge around the people aspect, in your opinion.
So for me, I've built a career off of managing two things really, really well, and that's health and safety and employee engagement. Engagement at APG is something we don't talk about. We actually measure it. But, I think, Cody, you'll talk about the wave, the psychology of how people deal with grief or change through various stages. In managing that, for us at least, it was really imperative that we communicate regularly, often, using the same message, driving towards the same goals, creating alignment amongst the different stakeholder groups in the business so that we achieve the goal. And the goal was very clear. So for me, managing that change is communication, alignment, a common goal, and celebrating our achievements. And we were able to do that successfully at APG.
That's a great story. Cody, we're going to turn to you next and talk a little bit about the process change, the impact on your people, and what that entailed in terms of the overall organization, if you would.
Sure. So, the wave that Matt was talking about, I think about it in terms of the Kubler-Ross wave, or the curve for grief. So, the 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And one of the things we realized early on, our executive leadership team, was that this was a new axis that we had to create alignment around. And so it's always difficult to create alignment among all your stakeholders and all your employees. But importantly, this was a new challenge. We had, trying to make decisions. And if you have, 5 people in the room and one's in denial, one's in anger, one's bargaining, one's depressed, and one's acceptant, you're not going to have, it's like a bad joke, right? You're not going to get much done. And so getting everyone to this and calling it out, talking about it openly, like Matt, Matt's talking about, communicating about it openly and saying, and, holding each other accountable for, look, I understand you're in the bargaining stage right now. And I think that's why you just said what you said. And I respect that, but I need you to understand that for us to be successful, we need everybody in the acceptance stage, and we need to be moving forward. And then again, echoing what Matt said, it all starts with the people, and and for everyone to understand, our pivot really started with doing what was the right thing for our city, doing what was the right thing for our state, our country, our world. And so getting, I mean, we had designers that had always worked 9 to 5 in a room that, with beanbag chairs and basketball hoops, that were working the midnight shift on a router table to make sure that we got much needed face shields to UTMB and Galveston the next morning. And so getting people to step outside not only their normal thinking, but their normal roles, vastly different roles. I mean, I was driving a delivery truck. So, and get people to feel heroic about that. And that was sort of phase 1. Again, echoing Matt, I think super critical for everybody to understand the plan. You have to communicate the plan, and then again, love what Matt said. You gotta report on it. You gotta measure it. How are we doing? So you have to keep doing those things. And then for our employees, one thing that was really critical was everyone had some fear about what, and continues to, with what's going on. So to understand, are we now a medical supply manufacturer, and that's our new identity? Is our purpose changed? Is this primarily what we're going to be doing from now on? Are we making signs? and so to help people understand, no, our core business, we are and always will be the premier sign manufacturer in this region. However, right now our city needs us, our state needs us. And right now that need continues, and as long as that need is there, we'll I'm sure as APG is doing, we'll continue to step up, and I think it may be a semi-permanent, if not permanent, part of our business. But it gave our employees, they had decided to work at National Signs because it was the premier sign company. So to communicate to them, that's not gone. That's not gone. We're going to continue to do that as well. And then as we were getting in the last few weeks, compartmentalizing and having folks that, reorganizing our organizational structure where that we have a small group of folks that work on PPE, and then everyone else is back working on signage, architectural accents, and outside digital displays.
I'm going to come back to you in just a second, talking about how you balance that all together and how you figure out the core business versus these new opportunities. I want to turn to Leland, however, and Leland, your business is a much smaller business in terms of employees, and all of a sudden your organization gets the aha moment that you've got an opportunity to expand the application of your product to other parts of organizations. How did your employees react to all of that? How did they get behind it? Was there trepidation? Was there excitement? How did that all evolve in your organization?
Yeah, just in echoing what Matt and Cody said, people, process, et cetera, those are the keys. And for us, it was a lot easier because we don't have that many employees. Our employees were the easy part. They got behind it. They get it. Our market opportunity is massive, way bigger than it was before, and before it was pretty big. So that was the easy part. We sell probably 75% through our partners. And so just because we have a few employees doesn't mean that the communication stops at our employees. We now have to go to all of our partners and get their mind share, and then make sure that they get it, and then make sure that they get it again, because it's not the primary thing that they're selling. But, you know, everything that everybody's talking about here, about communication and alignment and all that, that is what our platform actually does. It engages employees. So our clients were actually using us to do some of the things that you're talking about. They used our quizzing to make sure that people knew what they needed them to know about their jobs going forward, and they were able to measure that. And then they used the discussion boards to further that learning, and they actually used them in a way that we had never anticipated, where you had user-generated content where the employees were talking about things that they could all do to better the business. And so it's a really great opportunity for us to, sorry about that, everybody gets a call now and then. Anyway, it was a great opportunity for us to, dramatically expand a whole bunch of things in the organization, and we're still going. We're still seeing opportunities that clients are bringing us that we hadn't thought about in the areas of culture and other things that I think we're going to end up leveraging across a lot more of our opportunities.
When we were talking previously, I was talking about the fact that I quote Rahm Emanuel a lot when he said the crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And this is really a great example, as you guys are talking about that, this pivot and opportunities that come out of these pivots. Matt, I'm going to turn the question to you and say, how do you balance the risk of disrupting that core business, which is part of the ethos of APG, alongside this altruistic opportunity to help mankind and PPE equipment? How do you balance all of that, and what's the process internally for doing something like that?
Yeah, Cody kind of spoke to this question in his last comment. For us, we're 77 years old. We're a manufacturer and distributor of small but necessary fluid sealing and conveyance products. That hasn't changed. That won't change. This opportunity that came along was simply that. It was an opportunity mostly born out of our desire to do something for the local community, to help out first responders and heroes that are on the front line fighting this terrible virus. So again, communicating that and letting people know, as Cody said, that, wait, do I work for a landmark sign manufacturer, or do I work for a manufacturer? That hasn't changed. Our strategy for the markets that we serve has always been to be, hassle-free, easy to do business with, deliver products on time, give the right answer the first time, products on time every time. And that hasn't changed. That won't change as a result of this virus. What it has done is it's taken that strategic process of developing new products and bringing new products to market, and it's shifted to an opportunity that came about rather quickly. So, internally, it's been about communicating that. It's been about reaffirming that our strategy is robust and will survive the current time that we live in. But it's also about communicating our desire to help local Houstonians, first responders, and medical professionals deal with a humanitarian crisis at the same time.
Got it. And Cody, you alluded to it previously. If you just talk a moment or two about how you're balancing that new opportunity with other opportunities, perhaps that your company faces.
Sure. For us, it was we use EOS as an operating system in the company. Some people know it as Traction, and so we reorganized our accountability chart. And so, like with so many things, it had to occur rather quickly. but we compartmentalize. We treat the PPE sort of as its own division. And so we have a few people that are focused on that, and they have clear objectives. They have a clear scorecard. They have clear quarterly initiatives, so on and so forth. But they are exclusively pointed at the PPE. And that's a rather small group because the opportunities do not lend them. It doesn't take a lot of people. We're dealing with folks like FEMA and the DLA and Lowe's, large organizations. So it's mostly executive level conversation. Then the rest of the business, now that we're past the emergency phase of the pandemic, is back to making landmark signs, back to making signs for Amazon and Home Depot, digital display boards, so on and so forth, architectural accents. And so we've done it simply through organization.
Got it. And Leland, your thoughts on this? Again, smaller organization, maybe not quite the reporting lines that you're hearing from Matt and Cody, but still needing to keep the core business and expanding into these other opportunities and balancing all that, deciding which has priority. Talk a little bit about that. And then as soon as you answer that question, we're going to pivot around and we're going to talk about speed of change in technology and how you see the speed of change occurring within your organization. But let's talk a little bit about how you balance all of this in your role, Leland.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that having been in the software business my entire career, it's something that you're always kind of wary of. That you tell your employees, hey, we're going to go do this other thing, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you have a student body right, and everybody is going and doing that other thing, and they forget the actual core business that you're supposed to be running. And then you get to go back and say, I didn't say stop doing that other stuff.
Right.
That's an addition to that other stuff. And so with us, that's true. We're fortunate in that we have certain partners that are in the training space. And so the direction relative to them is pretty clear. They're not going to really be impacted by this new move that we have on really looking at communication and enhancing communication within organizations as well, and that type of thing. That's going to be some of our other partners. And some of our partners play in both spaces, so it's a communication to them. So from that perspective, I think we've got that one covered, but it's a big deal to avoid if, in fact, you have a large organization and you communicate. You got to communicate really, really specifically.
So now let's pivot just a little bit and talk about technology and speed of change. And I laugh with my dad because my wife and I just taught him how to use Zoom. And he thought that was the best thing in the world. So we're all on Zoom right now. And a lot of things have changed when you think about the last 90 days. But when we were talking initially, I was talking about how quickly things moved in this environment. And I think our audience would enjoy hearing some vignettes about how quickly that transpired and how you see that continuing or not in your organization. And we'll start with you, Matt.
I think I spoke to it a little bit in the beginning. I've come from a manufacturing background my entire career, and I've always been slightly skeptical of the ability to dissect an organization between manufacturing O-rings, gaskets, and seals, which can't be done remotely, with customer service, administrative, APAR, being able to do that remotely and the risk that would cause amongst the organization. So with COVID, my hand was kind of forced. We needed to reduce the employee density on site to mitigate risk of spread within the facility. And we had to do that over the span of about, a week. So it was a major paradigm shift for my business. And I think probably very similar for Cody and any other manufacturing business. I don't see that changing. I see that persisting. I see that as really a paradigm shift in the way that employers are able to offer more flexibility to employees and still, as mentioned, measure productivity delight customers, grow our business, and deliver against our strategic goals. So that shift in technology happened at a lightning speed for an industry that has changed very little over the past 20 years. And I don't see that changing. I'd be really interested in hearing Cody's thoughts on this one, though.
Yeah, Cody.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, very similar experience. I think some things I might add that aren't just echoes of what Matt said, but I think he would probably agree. 3-year plans got reduced to 3-week plans. You needed to accomplish 3 years worth of diversification or technology adoption, so on and so forth. And you had 3 weeks to do it. And it was a painful 3 weeks because you really needed to do it in about 3 hours. So 3 weeks seemed like forever. We also, Zoom has become ubiquitous, obviously, for many of us, along with a couple of competing technologies. But figuring out how to use it in a variety of ways, our first step was to figure out how to use it to meet as an executive leadership team, senior leadership team, meet with our board of directors, to meet with Tolkien, our private equity sponsor. Then we had to figure out how to have production meetings, sort of those management level meetings. And now we've had to figure out how to make sales calls and how to interact and sell and market using technology. So that really accelerated our requirement to use technology for design and engineering, and then be able to upload all that and show it on a Zoom, to be able to meet again with a Amazon or with a Home Depot to explain to them everything we were doing, or interact with the permitting department in Houston. So just a lot of really quick adoption of technology. I shared Matt's skepticism about the ability to maintain and sort of feed and nurturing of the company's culture, which I think is one of our most important jobs as CEOs, remotely. I remain skeptical of that since we've been able to. It definitely presented challenges. It created a much accelerated communication cadence, I think. I was used to doing all employee communications once a month. It became apparent very quickly that needed to be every week, not every month. A month was way too long. That was an eternity. And then there you go with more. How do you have an all employee meeting over Zoom? And again, like Matt, when 2/3 of your employees, 3/4 of your employees don't work on carpet, they work on concrete.
Right, exactly. Leland, this must be music to your ear. Technology, embracing technology.
That's right, Leland. Call me.
Tell us about how that affected your business. I'm sure it was a very positive development because people do need to communicate. We've been talking about that.
Yep. So, we're a technology company, so we've been using Zoom and WebEx and others now for the last 5+ years. And so nothing new there. What did change, though, you'll find interesting, is that, like most technology companies, we had an office, and all of a sudden nobody's at an office. And so your communication has to become much more intentional. Before it was kind of like, oh, we're going to go do a Zoom, and I can kind of do it from wherever I am. Usually you do it from the office. But to wrap back around and have those intentional conversations, that's a change even for us. For our clients, I think the intentionality comes in not just getting on Zoom and doing your normal thing, but I think companies are going to have to, as we kind of, ultimately leave the pandemic, they're going to have to decide where's the new balance. How many of your employees are going to, remain kind of as a remote optional, potentially, or not? And I think some companies will embrace that, some won't. But for the ones that embrace it, you're going to have to look at technologies like what we provide to help maintain that culture. And, an interesting thing that we have a couple of our clients using us for is after a critical Zoom, it might be a planning Zoom, it might be a key communication Zoom, they'll push out a trivia quiz and a discussion board to make sure, number one, that people are paying attention during the Zoom, which you never know. And with our app, you actually would know because they know that they were going to be quizzed afterwards and expected to enter into some sort of discussion. And that's the purpose of key communication. It doesn't work for organizations if you're talking and nobody's listening. So
we have one of those quizzes today, right, Leland?
That's right. We should. We're sending it to all the people on this, and we're going to just see who actually paid attention to what each of us said. That's
funny. That's funny. Well, let's take a step back and talk a little bit more strategically about how the environment, the business environment for each one of your firms is changing as a result of this pandemic, and what you think you're going to need to be able to do better now because of how technology has moved, and how's your core business going to be affected relative to the overall strategic environment that you're in. So you might want to, you can talk about how you are relative to competition or what's going on, but how has all this pivoting and introspect changed your overall ecosystem for the business? And I'll start with Matt again. Matt.
That's a great question. I think our core strategy remains intact. Largely we've got an opportunity in a very, very large market, a very large, very fragmented market, to become more relevant to our partners, our channel partners, and our end user customers. So, in terms of how that's changed retrospectively, looking at what we did to change to pivot, it's more been acceleration of our strategy through this opportunity. So how quickly we're able to develop new products, the cadence at which we can bring them to market, the level of success that we can experience in bringing products to market. And it's another pivot to bring that back to our core strategy and how do we get deeper, wider within our core products, seals, gaskets, O-rings, glass, and safety plastics, so that we're a better partner in a market where customers are going to be looking to reduce risk to foreign supply chains. As a result of this, customers are going to be looking at consolidation opportunities, and we want to be that provider in this space.
Matt, before we leave you, how do you see the overall ecosystem? The ACG is all about M&A and folks that serve in that arena. Do you see opportunities to consolidate your business with other businesses? Do you see it accelerating, decelerating? What are your thoughts generally in that ecosystem?
Sure. I think once we get through this initial period where everyone's just trying to get their feet back underneath them, that the market is going to demand consolidation. And I think that consolidation is going to happen rather rapidly in particular segments of the space. And I think the economics around M&A will, at least for a period of time, be invariably different than they were at the end of last year. So absolutely part of our strategy is to consolidate in and become deeper in our core products, but also look at adjacent spaces as a result of our strategy. And in my opinion, as we move forward, this happens at an accelerated rate and at a much different economic scenario than it would have 6 to 8 months ago.
And by that you mean lower multiples or better multiples?
I do.
Yeah.
I think multiples are going to be much different than they were, much lower than they were. So it is an opportunity for businesses that have great capital backing, that have great foundations and the ability to add on. This presents a tremendous opportunity, in my opinion.
Got it. Cody, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely agree with Matt on the consolidation piece and the opportunity. definitely agree on the multiple piece. You know, what does last 12 months of EBITDA mean right now?
Right.
When
Yeah.
you're looking at valuing a business, so um, I suppose that has to show up somewhat in multiple. But I think ACG and Gulf Star is going to have some other webinars, which I'll be tuning in to listen to on that subject. But
Right.
definitely agree with Matt about that. In our industry specifically, what we are seeing is that the smaller Main Street businesses that is almost flatline. I mean, not down, but flatline. Um, um, However, larger businesses, again, like the Home Depots, the Amazons, doing very well. Uh, Activities up. So we're definitely seeing an environment of winners and losers. So obviously, we've got to focus on the winners. The winners in our industry are spending more frequently, and they're spending more money when they do spend money. So being in touch with who's the winners and who's the losers, and being in front of the winners is important for us. Uh, with regards also to the pandemic effect on consolidation and how that'll affect our industry, I think we're going to see consolidations in oil and gas and in banking, financial services in particular. And for us, that creates an opportunity because if there's a merger and acquisition, it creates a need for new signage. So typically there's either the party that was the weaker party is going to be rebranded, or the entire entity is going to be rebranded, which creates need for signage. So staying really close to the deal community and understanding what mergers and acquisitions are taking place, and how that is spawning rebranding, and then being the premier service provider to that is important for us. And
Got it.
then a couple other things real quick. Uh, we're seeing we're having success with creating deeper alliances in our with key companies in our supply chain like Daktronics. Again, I think folks are identifying we're picking teams. I think all of us need to be picking teams. Right? Again, there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers, and so I think the winners are going to covey together, and we're actively creating deeper relationships in our supply chain with who we think are the best of breed and the strongest, and who are going to make it. And then with that final stakeholder group, employees, it's given us an opportunity to upgrade our talent because of the pivots we've made, and the success we're having, and we're able to go out and cherry pick some of the best employees from our competitors.
Got it. So Leland, the darling of the M&A world are tech-enabled services that generate recurring revenues, and you're right on the wave there of that. Talk a little bit about your macro environment, and even pivot just a little bit. We had a question from the audience here about how your sales process has changed in that process. So those are two actually very different questions. So let's start with the growth of your business and how you see left and right, the competitive environment, the strategic environment. And then we'll pivot down to talk a little bit about your sales process and how that has changed. So those are two different questions, but we'll start with the one first on the strategic side.
Yeah, so on the strategic side, I'll talk about inside the company first. And inside the company, as I said earlier, we've got a much broader market opportunity. Our personas have expanded. The persona meaning the people that we can call on. So if all you're selling to somebody is a training reinforcement tool, guess who you're going to talk to? You're going to talk to the director of training, or in a bigger company, it might be the chief learning officer or the chief talent officer. Now with engagement solutions and communication solutions and enhancing that internal communication, you're talking about a breadth of solutions that really can get up to the level of the chief HR officer or even the CEO of a company, because they're so critical. I mean, the difference between good and bad execution there can determine your company's success or not. So
Got
that's
it.
inside the company. Outside the company, from a strategic standpoint, macro, if you will, it's an extinction event for a lot of technology companies. I mean, literally, they don't have the capital. A lot of companies that I've heard of, their growth has not only stopped, but it turned negative almost immediately. One friend of mine was at a $10 million annual recurring revenue. He had gotten an offer to acquire his company in November for over $100 million. And in the first 2 weeks of COVID, it dropped by $4 million annual in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So, and that's a successful company. So imagine unsuccessful, people just start canceling their subscriptions, and it's not going to be pretty. With that said, it's an opportunity for people who end up coming out ahead to do exceptionally well. So that's kind of the inside and outside. Relative to our sales process, as I said earlier, we're starting to get incoming leads, which is really, something that we hadn't seen much of. So that's all good. People are looking, searching for us and getting to us for everything from remote training to communications to engagement to our old true and tried training reinforcement. So it's a little bit of all of the above, and because of that, we anticipate pretty significant growth.
So that is a great segue into my next question, coming actually from the audience here. But how do you guys see the near-term opportunities and prospects for your business? And then talk a little bit more into 2021. So I call 2020 near-term and 2021 a little bit further midterm, if you would. How do you see coming out of the pandemic? What are you starting to hear from your client bases? What is your prognosis for your business? Just so we get a sense of what you guys are thinking here in terms of overall business environment. And I'll start with Matt.
Yeah. So looking at the two main drivers of our business, which is OEM manufacturing and MRO, we're seeing capital spending decline into 2020. And what I'm not sure of is how much of that is short-term and how much of that will persist. We see a high correlation to our business to the manufacturing PMI, which I think most people saw took a drastic dip in April, rebounded slightly in May. There's a bit more optimism in the market. So near term in 2020, we see a fair amount of recovery, particularly in the third quarter, exiting the year. Our anticipation is that 2021 really becomes the year that we thought 2020 was going to be from a planning and budgetary perspective. Obviously, all dependent on the market itself, but all indicators point to that. There's a lot of demand that's pent up. The fundamentals of the market remain very robust. Again, this wasn't a crisis like we had in 2008 or 2015 outside of the oil and gas market. So we feel like demand is going to be there. So the opportunity for us is to really bet in our strategy, to really bet in our service proposition, to look at opportunistic M&A and emerge from this. And top grade our talent, as Cody said, and emerge from this a really formidable player in our space.
Perfect. Cody, I'll let you have a brief stage here. Thoughts on economy and how it's affecting your business 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, I think it's very disruptive, and so we've got to find a way to. I think the economy is going to be disrupted for the foreseeable future, through the period that you've mentioned. So I think our medical situation is uncertain, our economic situation is uncertain, and our social situation is uncertain. I don't know if kids are going to go back to school in the fall, and I don't know if we're going to have a massive outbreak in the fall of COVID. So I think the economy, our society, our hospitals are going to be disrupted for the foreseeable future. We plan on figuring out how we can help and we plan on continuing to grow. We have line of sight on being able to reach our revenue and EBITDA goals, but it's by being very, very flexible, very, very creative, very, very imaginative.
Perfect. Leland, your business, I'm going to be real happy to hear how you think your business is going to proceed here.
Yeah, I mean, we're projecting that we're going to more than double from this point to the end of the year. And of course, that could accelerate depending on our partners, because we really have a difficult time forecasting partner revenue. But even on a micro level, in March we were helping several of our clients with things like facts and information around COVID, and then things like work at home best practices and things like that. Several of them did some surveying of their employees, because let's face it, most people are depressed, most people have anxiety, and so if you're not using the tools at your disposal to find out how your employees are doing, you're missing a great opportunity to build great goodwill with your employees. So that was in the March, April timeframe, and then into now. Now, several of our clients are actually looking at, okay, now we need to start looking at things like back to work and making sure that everybody's on the same page. If somebody walks into an office and doesn't wear a mask and everybody else is wearing a mask, that's kind of an interesting conflict that's going to happen at the office. And I think we're going to see that a lot across the country without really clear communication as to why we want people to do particular things. So overall, there you go.
Leland, you can get them to wear a face shield.
Even better.
You can see their whole face.
And the benefit of that is you can actually breathe with that on.
You can. And it protects your eyes. 713-440-3636.
There you go. That's a shameless plug. I really appreciate that. We've got 3 minutes, and what I want to do is go really quickly. It's a thumbs up or thumbs down. It's a question from the audience, and that is, did you enable yourself of any of the government programs, payroll protection plan or Main Street lending plans? Did they help? Matt?
Yeah, we did not take advantage of those programs.
Got it. Cody?
We did take advantage of those programs. They did help. The more helpful programs for us, though, were the state and federal programs to stockpile PPE.
Got it. Leland?
Yes, and it was more from a, make sure that you've got the runway you need to get to the next level. And so, for a lot of technology companies, as I said earlier, it's about survival. And by doing that, it gave us a lot of confidence. So we happen to be closing on our Series A actually today. So it helped at least reduce my anxiety over the last
Perfect.
month
Well,
or so.
thank you. Yeah, Crutchfield Capital took advantage of some of those programs, and we were grateful to have them. I think they actually helped us. Look, guys, we really appreciate your time. I mean, the message I think I'm hearing from you is a very altruistic, let's help the community. Let's find opportunities to grow. Each of you have been very bullish in terms of your own business, and I think the CEOs of businesses like yours have to keep the optimism forefront, because if you're not optimistic, then it's hard to keep your employees optimistic. But I'm hearing a lot of great hope and aspiration, and persistent pays off. So we really appreciate you guys lending an hour of your time to the ACG. This has been very insightful, and we wish all of you well, and thank you very much for participating. So that'll end our session at exactly 11 a.m. to everybody. Jen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, JB.
Thank you all. Thank you all to the panelists, and to JB. We really appreciate it. I want to remind everyone that we have part 2 on July 23rd at 10 a.m. We're going to have some private equity folks in here to talk about a similar topic of how they've made strategic changes during the quarantine. Say that 6 times. All right, guys, everyone have a great day. Thank you very much.